The views and opinions expressed on Where Did the Road Go belong to the person speaking them. They do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of other people on the show or the show as a whole. This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by the following amazing individuals: Greg Ross, Bill Illuminati, Allison Cook, Yvonne Williams, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, and Michael Frisky. Thank you all for helping to make this show possible. And if you'd like to help out, become a patron at wheredidtheroadgo.com. It's only $3 a month for lots of extra content.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Soraya.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have finally back the twosome of Super Saxon Inframan and Christopher Ernst.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
And Chris is recovering from COVID.
I am. Apologies for any slow talk or coughs that I don't mute.
Wait, don't mute your slow talking. That would be very confusing.
I won't mute the slow talking, especially if it starts to sound weird and trippy.
Yes.
Hopefully that'll repeat. We'll get some good sound bites.
Yeah.
That was a great moment. I was trying to think about who we've had, Skype issues. Skype is going away too. We've been using Skype.
That's right.
This whole time, and it's going over to Teams, which I don't really understand why they're getting rid of it. But I guess you're Microsoft. You don't need to own two things that basically do the same thing.
Yeah, who knows, man?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I've used Teams once. It seemed to work pretty flawlessly, so I'm fine with that. I know everyone likes Zoom, and I never had good luck with Zoom.
Teams is fine.
Yeah.
That's what we have. Yeah. That's what we have through my work. It works. At this point, anything that, I feel like, anything that works and that has, is really good about not dropping calls.
Yeah. But
right.
The question is it because of Skype that we've had some of this fun weirdness, or is it just you, Chris?
It's probably a little from column A, a little from column B. I'm sure there's some arcane code in the root of Skype to do strange preternatural things.
Remix everything you're saying.
A lot of this might just be Chris,
or it might be me.
Yeah,
I am known. I have that latent Kundalini energy that can sometimes come out and attack things electronically across the ether.
Well, Shirley Black had that issue occasionally, so
That's right, she did. Yeah.
She totally blew up someone else's computer across Skype. So,
oh wow.
Yeah, she actually, if I remember right, it's been a while since I've actually talked to her. Except online, but she would have little LED lights near her when she was doing Skype or stuff, because she would get, if she got emotional about something, usually when she was talking about her near-death experiences or anything, sometimes the little LED lights would start flickering.
Oh.
And that's when she knew, so the first time I had her on to talk about that stuff in detail, she started feeling it, and her lights started flickering. And I don't know that they're even attached to anything. I think they're just, the way she described it, I think they're just like lights that aren't plugged in.
Right, yeah.
And they'll start kind of lighting up, and she goes, I need to go. I'll be back in a few minutes. And I was like, oh, man, I hope I didn't say the wrong thing or what, And then when she called me back, she goes, no, the lights were starting to go off. I didn't want anything to blow up.
Yeah, no,
wow.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
So we're going to do an AMA show tonight. We got AMA questions from patrons. And I'm not even sure AMA is the right term for it, because that's Ask Me Anything, and it's Ask the three of us.
What do you call them? Listener questions? Listener questions? I don't know.
I don't know.
I feel like I've heard that before. Maybe I'm just it's the latent fever and coronavirus coursing through my system.
I also, as I told you guys, I had a note here, subjects to talk about, and I wrote spiderweb guy. I have absolutely no idea what that means.
I read this article about the student at Gotham University, Peter Parker. So
I did have a couple of actual notes that I do know what we're about before we get to the questions. Well, the first thing I wanted to address is I had to change the beginning warning on the show.
Okay.
And this, I don't, like most people, were fine with it. And the only reason it's there is just so that people understand that, if I have someone on that I disagree with, I'm not necessarily going to argue with them. Mm-hmm. Like I'm going to let them express what they think is going on. So it's like, the concept was basically don't, mistake me letting people speak their theory, talk about their ideas. Don't assume that if I don't disagree with them or argue with them that I agree with them, or any of us necessarily agree. Like whoever's saying it, that's the person who's saying it. Don't assume it's a single mind that if you're not interrupting them,
Right.
So that's all I meant by that. But people were a few people got upset. One guy was flipping out about how we claim to allow freedom of speech, but then we criticize David Paulides.
Sorry.
And I was like, yes, right, what?
Yes, there you go.
So I changed it a little just to make it clearer, but for just clearer edification, all it means is that I don't, everyone speaking, that's their opinions. We don't have to argue over opinions. We can disagree and be fine with hearing other people's opinions.
Yeah, it's true.
Absolutely.
Not a hive mind.
Right. So, and technically, I was supposed to have one. I had one on for a long time because VBR asked me to put one on that basically said that it's not, the show is itself and not, the basic disclaimer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And after a while, I stopped having one, and then I thought, well, let me put that back because I do like that. I forget I had somebody on and they were saying that I was saying this, and I was like, I wasn't saying that. That was a guest saying that. And I'm like, maybe I should put that disclaimer back on the beginning, that little warning that says, hey, don't assume we're all in agreement just because we're not arguing about stuff.
We do live in interesting times, as the curse goes right now. So, maybe everybody's on edge a little bit and, thinking about what side are you on? I think that's in the ether, which it doesn't have to be, but I think that maybe that's the reason, right?
That makes sense. Yeah. But I'm sorry, I
no, go ahead.
didn't mean to cut you off there. But with all of these things we talk about, I mean, just think of the UFO angle between like nuts and bolts and ETH and other types of origins for those things, and you're not going to have somebody on that's really dedicated to a nuts and bolts theory and then tell them they're wrong.
Right.
That would be inappropriate. But it's still okay, to talk about those theories and why I might support this aspect of this or that aspect of something else, or, be disappointed that David Paulides doesn't follow up on some of the things that he's put in his books. But, those are my opinions.
Right. Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's, I actually haven't listened to it yet, but I just saw that you had Marty and Mike on to talk about Chris Bledsoe. I mean, that's I from talking to you before, I doesn't, unless maybe that changed your mind, that interview, but you didn't seem to be a huge proponent of interest in Chris Bledsoe prior to that. But
no.
You had him on to two people that were on to speak about it, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're endorsing or not endorsing. It's just,
Yes. Yeah. And the thing is, like, both of them spoke very highly of Chris. I never looked at Chris's stuff because I felt like most of it came to my awareness because of people like Lou Elizondo and that whole disclosure stuff. And I was like, okay, I don't think much of this just because of who seems to be handling him now. But both of them kind of said the same thing, that, they don't, really appreciate how he's being handled. But they think he had a genuine experience and that what he, his initial stuff was very real and very, and so to me, I wanted to hear why they thought he was genuine, because here are two people that I respect their opinions.
Absolutely.
And And also, Marty, as I said in that interview, suffered a serious heart attack.
Oh, no.
Yeah, back
sorry, Marty.
a few weeks after we did that interview.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And
I know you've been having health issues. I had heard that. But
well,
yeah.
he got into a car accident.
Oh, maybe that's what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I mean, I think he was out riding his bicycle and he had a heart attack. But there's an update here from one of the Snake brothers. Well, only one of them's married. I can't remember which one. And she said, Marty is getting stronger and walking a lot more on his own. He had to go back to the hospital for a small infection, but test results came back saying he's clear. They had changed up his antibiotics, and I think that did the trick. So minor setback there with going back to the hospital, but good news on overall progress. His wife, Lisa, is a true warrior as well. But there was another update here, I thought. Maybe not. Maybe that was it. Okay, so yeah. So he's recovering. There was something about him being able to walk again, too. Or he was getting to the point where he could walk again.
Yeah.
And now I'm not seeing it. But I guess he's talking a little bit and he can walk a little bit. Hasn't, obviously it's going to take him some time to recover from it. Yeah. But he survived. So survived and recovering. So excellent.
Yeah.
So there was a thing that popped into my mind. And we were talking about disclosure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, sometimes people will get very upset because we'll dismiss the disclosure movement. And I mean, we've talked so many times about why, but I realize that, people have this, when they look at this stuff, there's this wish fulfillment stuff going on. And that's a big part of what you get with anyone who gets into this stuff and wants it to be a certain thing. And when you point out that maybe that thing isn't what it is, they get upset. Like it disrupts their way of thinking of things. They feel like you're debunking it, their beliefs and stuff like that, which is not really the goal. Like I said, I once had one show where someone thanked me for re-enchanting their world and the next comment was someone complaining that we were disenchanting the world by being skeptics. And it's like, really? Like the two opposite responses. And I realized, well, yeah, because we're sort of debunking the stuff that's bunk. We're saying this doesn't make sense, but look at this stuff where it's a bigger picture and makes more sense. But I think also people, they see this weird stuff and whether they find it fascinating or not, they just want it to make sense.
Yeah.
And this is where the con men are so good at taking advantage of that, because if you sound confident, and there's something I'm going to say about that too, but if you sound confident, you get, people will flock to that. They like confidence. There's a whole thing in The Invisible Gorilla about why people go toward someone who seems confident.
Yeah, and I guess I don't think that a confidence man, I mean, that's a good definition of it. I don't always think, I know that the term, and we've thrown the term grift around a lot, but yes. I don't necessarily think it's always somebody that's coming in, that has this predisposed agenda where they know that they're going to play the long. It's not like the Sting or the grifters or, some sort of long con game like we're playing the Spanish Prisoner here. I think that a lot of times when, I guess, at least I use the term, grift, it's more in the new age supplement sales way or Gaia TV. There's something that's, and I use those as examples. I'm sorry if anybody's, really into those. I think there are some great supplements one can take for their body, but it's also a corrupted, industry too, just like most things are these days.
Yes.
And, but I think that sometimes these people are they're trying to make a living off of it. And that's no different than it has been forever in, UFO circles. There are people that sometimes rise to the forefront that aren't necessarily selling a hoax in that something they made up in order to scam money, knowing they're doing a criminal activity. What they're doing is they're like self-deluded, or they're, more worried about being popular and selling books than they are necessarily about doing solid research. And you could also say the same thing about Neil deGrasse Tyson at this point. I mean, there are a lot of people who end up doing that. And I think that a lot of the people that are in the UFO disclosure movement aren't like nefarious, con people that are coming trying to steal money. They're greedy human beings, or just human beings trying to survive, that are thinking mostly about their own profit. And many of them might have come from, a place where they really had a vested interest in UFOs, or many of them maybe have had an experience, or both. But it doesn't mean that they're aren't also prey to essentially like Kardashian culture, or, Instagram culture, or TikTok culture, or whatever hustle culture we have to live in these days. For me, at least, that's how I think about it.
That's a very good way of putting it. And it certainly is that some of these people truly believe what they're saying. The problem is we're dealing with a subject that we do not have the answers to. We can't prove anything, but I think, people want to feel that, want to feel like they understand it, and they understand it when someone confidently explains there's 17 races coming to the planet, and they present it well, and they act like, no, this is totally proven. You just got to listen to me. And, and they have that confidence behind them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's good to remember too, we've all followed this topic, personally or professionally for a really long time. And, Matt Festa and I have laughed about it so much that, we were talking about making a band t-shirt called Imminent Disclosure, with dates that disclosure was supposed to happen as tour dates on the back. And,
I love that idea.
It's, so after a while, you just get very suspicious of disclosures around the corner, or they're about to make an announcement. And, we do know that there have been bad actors, though, too. I mean, look at like Richard Doty, or, who was it that was the guy at MUFON that then revealed he had been putting out this information years ago?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was like back at it was in the 80s.
Right. Yeah, and then there are people like Sean David Morton, who are like really pulling grifts,
Yeah. Was it Bill Moore?
Bill Moore, yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Bill Moore, the UFO dude? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But no, and then you have people that absolutely are pulling real grifts and things like that. And so it's just it's a fraught topic, and it's good to be wary,
yes.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I wrote down here, and I did text a voice on this, so I haven't read it since. But I was listening to one of the episodes, one of the latest episodes that Jeremy has put up of Paratopia, and I don't remember which one it was, but something I think it was something Jeff said clicked with me, and I said validation and answers are why people go to researchers in the first place with their experiences, their weird experiences, because they want to understand what's going on, but they also want that validation that what happened to them was real and they're not crazy. And I said, but these experiences are actually meant to unsettle you and break down your core beliefs. And when you're going to someone who professes to have the answers, you're not actually doing yourself a favor. Validation is a good thing, understanding that what you experience is real and it happens to people. But when someone then pushes it into a particular paradigm, it does damage to the purpose of having the experience. It destroys it, and it, which is in the idea being that it's to restructure your worldview, break down those core beliefs, and allow you to see things. I wrote closer, or I said it, interpreted whatever things closer, even if a little bit closer to how they really are. Okay, that's what it was. Allow you to see things a little closer to how they really are. So, like I said, I don't remember what he said that triggered that. I actually pulled over and just did a quick voice to text before I lost it. But it's just, people are like, what happened to me? Well, they go to someone like Bud Hopkins, who's then going to give them, aliens were experimenting with you and taking sexual material too, and let me hypnotize you and we'll see that stuff's there. And then it completely changes the experience the person actually had. It devalues it.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's one thing to go and say, am I crazy? Did this happen to me? No, this happens to other people. Okay, so this is an experience other people have had. I'm probably not crazy. But I think a lot of it is looking inside and trying to figure out what those experiences mean to you, what they, and it is unsettling. It's meant, like I said, it's meant to be unsettling. It's not, you don't go through massive change without being unsettled.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't seem like it, right?
It's unfortunate, but that's just how we are. We have to, and when you have those core beliefs shaken, like you believe reality is one way and then you experience something that contradicts that, like people will try and then push it back into a materialist sort of paradigm when it doesn't seem to actually fit into that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they feel more comfortable if they can fit it into a materialist paradigm. And if you're a skeptic, we've seen, who was it, Michael Shermer, that, had the experience with like the radio or whatever, radio or the watch that his...
I know who Michael Shermer is, but I guess I don't know that experience, that story.
I don't remember if it's Michael. It's one of the big name skeptics, had a paranormal experience where after his like father died or whatever, like the watch or radio he had started working for just a short period of time and then stopped. And I don't remember the details.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the story, but I'm.
And he told the story and he said, I don't have an explanation for this. But then he continued being just as skeptical of everything afterwards. And it's kind of like, you can't let, that should have been your gateway to understanding that things aren't the way you think they are.
Right.
And instead you just kind of like, acknowledged it happened and then threw it out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And Spiderweb guy.
I'm going to find out the Spiderweb guy. I'll figure it out.
Famous tattoo artist, Spiderweb.
I didn't catch what Saxon said.
Oh, sorry. I was talking over Chris. I apologize. I was saying I'm going to figure out who it is because I need to know who Spiderweb guy is.
I will remember when this show is done being recorded.
Yes.
So we asked patrons for questions, and we're going to answer those now. And we're going to start at the first one, which was connected to everything we just said, from Mark Brady. I noticed that we have not heard anything about disclosure since the inauguration. Is it dead for now, or am I missing something? And of course, the government's never telling us anything. That's the other thing. And Trump said he was going to disclose this stuff. When Hillary was running, she said she was going to disclose this stuff. I believe Obama said something about disclosing this stuff. Bill Clinton said he was going to disclose this. I mean, they all do. They all kind of like, oh, yeah, we'll tell you when I get in there, I'll find out what's going on. And then, it's just lip service.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the disclosure movement's still going. It's still making the same circles. It's still producing the same nothingness that makes you think something's going to happen and then nothing really happens. It's that carrot on the stick sort of thing. I don't know if we've gotten anything since the egg video.
I don't think we have. Not that I've seen. There was whether or not you consider this disclosure related or not, 60 Minutes did a piece on the drones in New Jersey and other places. And, there were some fairly high ranking members of the military that were saying that we don't have any idea what these things are. And it's a real huge gap in defense. So that's a very terrestrial thing, but it's still... I feel like it's connected just because of all the discussion around it.
And I know a few listeners were upset that we were saying a lot of the drones were things like airplanes and common things. And they're like, and like someone said, well, Whitley Strieber said that there's something weird going on. And honestly, as much as I respect Whitley's assessment of things at this point, I don't particularly trust.
Yeah. And I will say that doesn't mean there weren't weird things going on.
Exactly. And that was the other thing. And I think we stressed that when we talked about it.
Yeah.
That we just can't tell at this point, but we know some of it's not weird.
Yeah. And it even like, I think Red Pill and I brought this up. I can't remember, but I know it was mentioned somewhere in our discussions on it about, it almost felt like some of those things were being astroturfed out there where, like the news reporter that was under one of the approach paths for the airport, and he's saying those things are drones. And it's like, no, man, that's commercial planes being sequenced into, Newark or something. Those kinds of things kept getting shared so much. And, I never could quite decide if people were trying to put those up to build clout or karma, or if it was to, obfuscate what was actually going on. But all of the evidence that people were posting, for me, 90% of it, 99% of it looked like airplanes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
that's the thing. People were posting everything they saw in the sky. And we're like, look, weird drones,
Yeah. And airplanes, especially when they have all of their lights on, when they're coming into land, particularly, they're wanting to make sure other air traffic can see them. Like commercial aircraft look freaky.
Yeah.
It's not just a couple of lights. They've got lights shooting over the wings and across the tail and down at the ground. I mean, it's a light show.
Yeah. And so, yes, there were certainly weird things about the drones, when that was happening. But also, most of it was probably not anomalous, but that certainly doesn't mean there was nothing anomalous there.
Exactly.
Sure.
But like I said, people were getting upset that, at least 2 people I saw get upset trying to say, oh, no, there was weird stuff going on. It's like, yeah, there probably was. But most of it wasn't weird.
Yeah.
So as far as the rest of the disclosure, like I said, I really haven't heard too much, but it generally just goes in circles. They'll start saying they're going to release something. We'll get a video that doesn't really, like the egg video or the Tic Tac video that, doesn't really amount to much in the end. And then it goes away, and then the cycle starts over again.
Yeah.
So the next question, coming from Janet's Planet, was, do you have any childhood paranormal experiences you can't explain? Honestly, I can't explain any of my paranormal experiences. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I don't know what they are, even when they look like something, that we should know, like seeing a UFO. I don't know what that really was. Childhood experiences, though, I mean, I had the Kundalini experiences when that started, when I hit puberty, where I was seeing hallucinations and hearing, hallucinatory stuff from the Kundalini waking up. The only ones that come to mind for me anyway are being in South Haven Park, and I've talked about this before. There was an area there that felt like it just had a really ominous feel. I was riding my bike around the park while my parents were a part of the live steam thing there, and I came to this big open clearing, and I just got the feeling like this really oppressive feeling, like something didn't want me there, that it was dangerous. And I actually ended up taking a picture, which I shared. I think I shared it with patrons. And there's kind of this white swirl to the picture that doesn't make any sense. Because I found that, and I shared it with you guys in the Slack too. And I don't know what caused that white swirl. None of the other pictures on that group of photos have that artifact on it. It could have just been a coincidence. But as soon as I saw the picture, I went, oh, that was the space. Like, what is this whole white washout look on the side here? But that and the same place, I had ridden the bike, and I stopped at this one spot on a trail, and I looked over, and there's these 3 people in the woods. And I kind of got a little freaked out, because I was like, maybe 10 years old at the time. And I'm kind of like, oh, crap, who is that? And in retrospect, it was probably a few hippies out smoking pot in the woods. But they saw me, and then they kind of started walking toward me, and I freaked out and took off. And as I was riding on this rough trail, I hit a bump, and the bike basically flipped sideways. And I felt the ground hit my arm. And then I was back upright again and continued going. And I was always like, what just happened? I should not still be going. Like, I just flipped off the bike. And it just, I have no real explanation for that either. That was just a weird one-off type of thing. Maybe I perceived it wrong. I don't know. I know when I stopped at the end of that area and looked back, they were kind of walking along the trail. And I was like, I think I'm going to go back to where my parents are, because I was really freaked out. And I'm thinking, in present sense, thinking, yeah, they were probably smoking pot. And we're like, well, we should probably someone just saw us. We probably should go,
Yeah.
So, and I know, Saxon, you have your snake experience.
Yeah. And, the weirdest thing about that I was thinking about the other day was I had never considered that like a cryptid experience until Red Pill brought it up that way.
Yeah. Well, tell people who haven't heard about it what it is.
Yeah. So the other thing to add to this is I wanted to say I was like 7 years old when this happened, but I was doing the math on it with my brother, and I think I was probably more like 4 or 5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it is a stranger time, and it's whatever you want to say about being that young. Maybe, you perceive things differently. But we were at like a family reunion at an aunt's house on the lake, And the lake had like cypress knees and trees and things like that went out a little ways before it went into open water. And there was a channel that came between those trees straight up to the bank. So, if you had a boat there, you could go in and out from their property. And there was a giant snake's head out of the water. And when I say giant, I mean it was like 8 feet across.
Oh, yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah, and its eyes were like the size of basketballs and were solid red.
Mm.
And it was really strange, though, because as it's coming towards the bank, it submerged right at the edge of the water where, you could see where it met the ground. And, of course, the water would have only been, inches deep at that point, maybe a foot. So there wouldn't have been enough space for this giant snake to go under the water. But my brother and I saw it, and we, ran kind of halfway down the hill to look at it, and nobody else saw it. And I'll say my brother's 9 years older than I am. So, and he still remembers it too. But it was totally normal for everybody else there. It was like it was just something that was in the water. Really strange.
The fact that you both saw it, also matters to that perception of it.
Yeah.
That's the thing that kind of still makes me feel like, okay, I don't think that was just me like misinterpreting something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was.
Sounds like a naga.
Well, it does, doesn't it? And I will say it was like almost jet black, with that kind of dark green highlight to it or something. But yeah, it was very strange, creepy looking, but these kinds of things, the best way I can describe it is like it has a different, morality does not apply to it the same way. And so it didn't feel like it was there to hurt anybody, but you sure as heck didn't want to get close to it.
Yeah.
And so I remember that, my whole life. And that's probably the most bizarre thing that I've had happen to me. The house that I lived in till I was 6 or 7, till I was 6, we saw shadow men all the time in it and heard music coming out of the ceiling in places. And one night I heard somebody sitting in the kitchen playing harmonica all night long. But when I would go in there, I wouldn't see him. And, but in my head, I could tell what the person was supposed to look like. And I cried the entire night because I could hear him in the kitchen playing and my parents couldn't. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff like that stuck with me. And, when y'all did the telepathy tapes, it's been interesting to listen to that show. Because so much of what they talk about in the telepathy tapes reminds me of when I was an adolescent and just the kind of strange experiences they had. I'm like, this is all very familiar.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely want to see more evidence behind all the work they're doing with the telepathy tapes.
Yeah.
Because I've been told that the videos that are available are not all that convincing. So, but if they actually do structured research, that's going to be significant, I think.
I think so too. One of the strangest things for me with listening to it was I did a lot of the synesthesia when I was young, and I didn't realize that was what it was.
Yeah.
I thought I was just trying to come up with other ways to spell things once I started to learn to read. But for every word, I saw colors and shapes.
Oh.
Yeah, and I don't do that anymore, but I probably did that till I was like 11 or 12 before it just stopped.
Sure. Yeah.
And I can still remember like what the shapes and colors were for certain words, but it was for every word when I was, till I was probably about 7 or 8.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was normal.
Right. Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Chris, what were your childhood experiences? Anything?
Well, I mean, I guess I feel like I want to say that I didn't have any, and most of the time I'd probably be my like knee-jerk reaction to say that I didn't have any, but I think that there might have been, some, if not many, circumstances that were, like Saxon was saying, I didn't think they were weird at the time. But I mean, I grew up as an incredibly weird kid, in an incredibly weird family that was doing incredibly weird things at a time when, especially, in the late 70s when, very few other people in the area were doing it. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I had more than I can think of. I certainly didn't have any like entity experiences. That was never a thing, and I was never. I never like no hauntings, no creatures that I can remember. Nothing like that. But there was one time when I was probably about 5 or 6 or something like that. That my parents left me someplace when they were off going, I think to just like do some shopping or I don't know. Anyway, I was at a friend's house and I started to have like a really bad panic attack. And so I started like screaming for my mom. And, this is in the early 80s. So there was, no way that anybody could have really contacted her if they're out, in a car, no cell phones existed and stuff like that. Well, apparently she said she heard me, and this was, miles away, and they came and, picked me up. And I was just, being a kid having separation anxiety, but she said that she heard me, and that wouldn't necessarily be my experience. It'd be more hers.
Right.
But that was something that I remember taking sort of for granted as just like, oh yeah, well, psychic connection between mom and a kid. But
right,
I was a kid who would be taught that was a normal thing. So I don't know. There aren't any other really explicit things I could think of off the top of my head. I wouldn't want to say it too, because I feel like there are a lot of folks who have had really, intense and articulate preternatural experienries that I don't want to pretend like I'm having anything like that.
Right. All right, Jeffrey Whitehead has a few questions for us. Let's go with: have you ever had a strong feeling about someone you just met without knowing why? Yes, many times. There have been people I've met who I feel like I've known all my life, almost immediately. A lot of times now when this happens, I realize it's an energy connection. So I'll have a strong connection with someone. I'll be like, oh, okay. I mean, and you guys were there when we did the Seth House stuff, and I picked it up from Amy there, that she had active Kundalini. And I was like, what is going on with this person? And I'm like, oh, she has Kundalini. I wonder if she knows,
Yeah.
And it was setting off, reading our auras.
and it was setting off your key energy. So, I mean, like I'm used to just looking, recognizing that energy connection. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it just means someone has strong energy and it's compatible with mine. So it's like, it stands out to me. But yeah, there's been a number of people who even like Tim Renner, when we first met in person, it felt like we were just old friends.
Sure. Yeah. I've had very similar to yours, Sarai. I think it's been an energy thing for me. And I always, I didn't always, I think, had the idea or knew that I was having some sort of connection with a person that went beyond what was just being discussed. But, I think some of it might be being able to read people, but some of it's also energy for sure. Yeah.
And some of it is being able to read people. The only people who tend to get by my sense of people that I end up being completely wrong about are narcissists, because, narcissists have very strong masks, and they seem like great people until you realize they're not.
Yeah.
Sometimes with, I assume they're narcissists. You'll meet those people that like everything, all the interactions are great, but there's something where you're like, that slight lack of genuineness.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In the interaction. So you just have to kind of decide if you're going to trust it or not.
Yep.
That's always interesting. I think my experiences with that would be really similar to y'all's. I've met some crazy friends in different parts of the world doing martial arts that, I really hit it off with. And the one kind of story I'll tell real quick that isn't necessarily I met them and it was great, but it was one of these things I sort of attribute to the experience of being in Thailand and just being in a strange place. Myself and there's two brothers and two other guys went to a little spa that was like a couple of blocks down the road from the Muay Thai gym we were at. And we were sitting in the hot tub, drinking watermelon smoothies, I think, or something like that. And there's a swimming pool right next to it, and there's no lifeguard or anything like that there. And there was a family in the pool that were Japanese. It was a mom and dad and a daughter and a son. And the son started to drown in the pool. And one of the guys that was with us had been in the Royal Air Force. And another one of the guys he'd worked in first responder for LA County.
Oh.
And, we're running over, like I'm trying to hold on to the mom because she can't figure out why these people are grabbing her son who's blue.
Oh.
And they are trying to resuscitate him, and they do. But, I've been lifelong friends with those guys, but that was the first time we were ever together. And I always kind of like think there's something, a little special about that just because of the circumstances of how it happened, beyond just trauma bond or something.
Right.
But I'm like, we were in a place that, for lack of sounding like a white kid talking about Orientalism, that felt a little magical and different. And I kind of feel like we got some kind of reward for being there to help that kid.
Sure. Well, here's my thought on thinking about that idea of Orientalism, because I've certainly experienced that, going to India a couple times and, other places, is I actually think you can look at it from a positive standpoint, particularly because we talk about ideas of, being in between spaces or liminal spaces.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily liminal, but it's like you're taken out of your element and put into some place that's very strange, and it's not like you're making a judgment on that, but what's happening is in the same way that with magic, with psi, with strange occurrences, when you're taken out of your everyday routine and put someplace where either by trauma or by being put into some weird sort of mystery school, like theater with drugs and sounds and whatever. These are things that can make your consciousness and your awareness shift slightly. And I think that that's something that's, good to recognize, because I think it is part of the experience of, how like going to different places or traveling, can be, and why it's important to do that is because it does put you in a different space where you're more receptive. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, there wasn't some fate type thing happening. I think that's also intertwined, but that's like another intersectional layer of this whole thing. But I think that, if that's something that you picked up or felt, I don't think that's necessarily like exotic Orientalism. It could be that if you were, grew up in Iceland and you went to Paraguay, you could have the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it has been interesting because, I have gotten to travel a lot and do some cool things in different places. Been really lucky to do that. But it was just different there. And,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And, that was the first time we had all kind of hung out as a group. We might have said hi around the gym or something like that, in the days before that. But, like those folks were all at my wedding. I've been at all of their weddings, and they're in South Korea and the UK and, other places like that. And it was just very, I don't know, different.
Okay, let's jump up to Seed Person 1. He has a fairly long question. It's a really good one. He had a sort of joke question. I'll answer that one first. That's a really simple one. He says, "This is a really silly question, but ever since I've been listening to the show, I wondered, in the old intro, the woman's voice says .com at the same time the piano goes dun-dun. Was that planned or just a coincidence? Totally don't have to read this one on the show, but if you could just give me a one-word answer here in the comments, it would put to rest a curiosity that's been spinning in my mind for years. I just never remember to ask." That was totally intentional. And the woman who's actually doing the speaking at the beginning of the show is the vocalist for Psyche Corporation. A very close friend of mine. And I'm not a musician, so I used software that kind of emulated a keyboard and just did a little thing with it. And that's how the original intro the intro with her voice on it was created. So I timed it out to do the dung dung, as she said, .com. And then I was going to write it down and I totally forgot. Someone redid the audio on that for me, and he did an awesome job. And that's the intro you hear now. And I don't have his name in front of me. I talked about it a lot when he did it, but I don't have it in front of me, and I don't even know where to look for it. I'm sorry about that, but whoever did that, thank you. It was an awesome upgrade to the intro. Which actually, I'm going to jump to a different question. We'll come back to Seed Person 1's other question. Jeffrey Whitehead also said, "I love playing the guitar. Do you guys play any instruments?" For me, no. I can mess around lightly with a keyboard. I used to be able to do a little bit of stuff like with a keyboard, but never anything serious. Chris, you were in a few bands.
I was, yeah. I mean, I play like in terms of an actual instrument. I can play guitar and bass, but I am quite musical in that, like I write a lot, and I have since I was a teenager. So I have a lot of musical ideas that come to me sort of out of nowhere. And I also have, Saxon was talking about earlier when he was talking about synesthesia. I have a very strong synesthesia, which I guess maybe it isn't synesthesia if it has to do with music, but like I see shapes and colors and stuff like that. And there's a very, like, if you turn music on and I shut my eyes, and maybe this happens to everybody, I don't know. I see very distinct shapes and like landscapes that show up. So I've always had music be a really huge part of what I'm doing. And actually, which reminds me that I've been trying to get some of my stuff out in preparation for maybe trying to do some music again. But yeah, I am a musician, have been for a long time. It probably was like the first thing that I started doing like seriously, creatively, besides like illustration and, art that a kid does.
Yeah. I mean, I do a lot with music, but I like helping bands. We have live bands play in studio. I've been doing a music show for 30 plus years now, almost in June, 31 years. And the whole goal of it is to expose people to new music. It's not just, hey, look, here's all the stuff you're hearing that's really popular. Like, I don't do that. But part of that's because I don't play an instrument. I'm not musically creative. So this is the thing I can do. I can help people get their music recorded. I can master music. I can do stuff like that, but I can't really play anything. I could sing a little bit, but not anything where I would need vocal training to actually go out in front of a crowd, but I apparently don't have a terrible voice if I use it right. Saxon?
I love music, but as much as I've tried to like take up guitar and things like that, I'm not consistent enough to ever really develop a love for it. So I just love to listen to music.
Yeah.
When I grew up, I thought I was going to be like a comic book artist. So I drew forever and ever and, very like illustratively. And then somewhere in there that switched from drawing to martial arts. And so, that's my art.
Right. That makes sense. And we'll come back to art questions in a moment, but let's hit Seed Person One's other question. He says, I do have a serious question too, actually. I've heard several stories of people creating their own power spots, either by going to places that have high strangeness and intentionally trying to hitchhike it back, or by using things like magic, focused intention, or geomancy. I first saw a guy on Paranormal Highway who went to a place with a lot of forest poltergeist activity and getting to know the area, then invited the entities back to his own acreage where he previously didn't have any encounters, but now he does. The second, I can actually attest to a bit after spending a year with daily magic practice. The small copse of trees, about 6 large holly trees in my backyard, started having odd wood knocks and strange rustling, and a large person was standing in there, as if a large person was standing in there shifting their weight. It happened pretty regularly. I would hear or sense something about once a week or so. I actually heard a huge crack from in there that sounded like it was from a branch that had to have been bigger than anything that could have been in there. Anyway, I was curious if you all had any experience with including a power spot or know anything about that. The geomancy is particularly interesting because it puts me in the mind of Bigfoot tree structures and stuff like that. I know Valet did this. Valet tried to create a power spot at one point. I don't know how successful it was.
I mean, that's kind of what Jeremy Vaney sort of did too.
Did he?
Well, the idea of going to a particular spot over and over until something happens.
That was Jeff.
I'm sorry, Jeff. Jeremy Vaney. Yeah. Well, at least I was in the ballpark.
Right. Yes.
I was thinking of Paratopia.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was talking about going to the same spot over and over. And I think that even tied into some of his stories about crystals too.
Sure.
Well, the only experience Jeff had with a crystal was the one where he put up against his head, and then he had a weird experience that night.
Yeah.
Because he didn't believe in crystals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So he didn't believe in anything New Age tinted. And then in their last, because they sort of ended Paratopia and went to a monthly thing, which really meant it didn't end. So next time I talk to Jeremy, I'm going to have to ask him why they were acting like they were going away from forever while at the same time saying we'll be back in a month. But yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. There are ideas I've had about the hitchhiker effect, and currently they're not coming to mind. I don't know if it's just that you're going into an area that shifts your energy, so that you're more perceptible to it in a normal location. I don't know that something's actually following you. I know it has been suggested that because I've done a lot of magical work here, that's why this place has so much activity. And I forget who first suggested that to me, but it was a long time ago, and I was like, oh, I had never even thought about that. Like, it's not the area, but that me doing this stuff has actually, created, an energy spot.
Yeah.
And then,
go ahead, Rob.
and then I was shown how to create almost like portals. I don't fully understand it yet because this goes into the multi-dimensional stuff I was shown. So I don't know if I've actually been successful doing this or not yet. I did a few things that I was shown to do, but I don't know if I quite did it right. And nothing of extreme note seems to have happened because of it. So I might be missing something, or maybe what I was shown was just nonsense. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. I can't remember who we were on the show with, but it made me think of, we were talking about, forest poltergeist type things. But, in national parks, and, you have a repeated spot where people have come to over and over and gone through the ritual of building a fire and all of these things, and how even that would start to charge that area because it's a constant repeating thing sort of stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's probably a lot of ways to create power spots. I would be wary of the hitchhiker effect because I just don't want to bring things home with me.
Yeah.
I've got enough pets. But the house we live in, it was built in the 1800s, and I have a friend that would actually come check on our pets, believe it or not. And one night he saw someone standing in the window that was like 6 foot tall when he was leaving. And he asked me about it once or twice if, I'd ever seen anything in there. And I'm like, no, it's never happened to me, but, it wouldn't surprise me. But our house has a really good atmosphere to it. So I almost just assume that there probably is something there, but it just likes us. And so it doesn't really feel the need to make itself known too much.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think there's something to that. I would be afraid that I would create the wrong kind of thing and then be stuck in a place that I couldn't get away from.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that triggers paranormal activity, and that goes everything from the person, their emotional state, to the area, to things like solar activity and environment and time of year. And I mean, there's just, it's such a varied ingredient list.
Yeah.
Right down to people's sensitivity to it and how they, some people are going to put more energy back into an environment that has certain energy. There's no one thing.
It can work though.
Yes. Oh yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
And I suspect that's exactly what I did here, is created sort of a weird energy. Just not realizing that that's what I was doing.
Well, that's my theory on like the Trinity test site. The reverse version of that is, you have a national park right next to the test site. So there's a lot of positive energy being brought to that place.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, the Trinity test site was where the first nuclear weapon was tested.
Yes. I learned about that from playing Infocom games.
From Infocom, and then, how much of Twin Peaks referenced that?
Only recently.
Yeah, that was only in the Return.
Was that one episode, right?
Yeah. But it did. And, yes.
What was the Infocom game called? I think it was called Trinity. And you kind of played through, like you were walking through doorways that would take you to different points where atomic warfare was developed.
Yeah.
And you ended on the Trinity test site.
Yeah. I remember there was the first time I think I had read about it. There was, or not read about it, but the first time I had started thinking about it in a preternatural way who's the they always like make fun of him, the other horror writer who's not Stephen King, who writes Dean Koontz.
Oh,
There's a Dean Koontz book, and I think it's Phantoms, where Trinity test site or plays a role in it or something. I feel like it was
I
like
read that.
they were like trying to like nuke some evil blob monster or something. Anyway, it was like that's when I feel like it was there that was my first thought of it as anything other than, the nuclear testing site, and that whatever that piece of info went in and out of my brain in history class.
So the game was called Trinity. It came out in 1986 for Amiga, Commodore, Apple computers. It says the plot blends historical and fantastic elements as part of a prose poem regarding the destructive power of the atomic bomb and the futile nature of war in the atomic age. The name refers to the Trinity test,
good.
the first nuclear explosion, which took place July 1945. It is Infocom's 20th game and the last game released by the company when it was solvent.
Yeah.
Interesting. One other thing I'll throw out there too for anybody that wants to dig deeper into this. The Trinity test was on July 16, 1945, and the Apollo 11 mission to the moon launched on July 16, 1969.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a little suspicious of that.
Yeah.
Well, I think NASA does pick specific dates to do things. I think. That's been shown, and that's the influence of Parsons. I think initially.
Yeah.
Using certain more beneficial dates based on astronomical stuff and magical, alignments and things like that. And of course, they're naming all this stuff after mythological and occult references. So,
yeah.
There's something there, and I don't know if it's just left over from Parsons or if they're still, sort of following that sort of paradigm. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Quick mid-show break here. Some contact info and a recommendation. So contact info is pretty simple. wheredidtheroadgo.com. You can find everything there. Links to all our social media. You can find links to my Substack. All the shows going all the way back to the beginning, all kinds of different stuff. Used to do book reviews when I first started this. Those are all up there. So just head over there for everything Where Did the Road Go related. You can also message me directly on the site. There's a little pop-up, which is a little annoying sometimes because you'll start to type something, say, in the search box because the entire site is searchable. And that little pop-up will pop up and you'll suddenly be typing in that. But it's there to help you communicate with me easier. You can also email me at contact@wheredidtheroadgo.com, or if you have a story or something you want to send stories at wheredidtheroadgo.com. And if you want to become a patron, it's only $3 a month. It's always only been $3 a month. It helps us out immensely, and you get a ton of extra stuff, extra content from almost every show. You get the show a week or two early, commercial-free, plus extra bonus stuff on top of that. So if you like the show, consider the measly $3 donation, or I guess not donation, subscription fee per month through Patreon. You can also buy separate Patreon episodes if you just want to hear one. Those are available on the site, on the Patreon site. Just go to the Patreon link. As well, that stuff is also available now through Apple Podcasts or whatever it is. Whatever Apple uses for podcasts, I put it up there too. All right, if you like heavy music, check out my music show, The Last Exit for the Lost. It's heavy music, but it's a lot of stuff you're not going to hear everywhere else. It's a lot of underground stuff, new and old. We do a lot of movie reviews and other stuff throughout. So you can find that at thelastexit.org. As for a recommendation, I'm going to go with kind of a popular one, but just in case people have not paid attention to it, I'm sure I recommended it when it first came out. Maybe, if I was doing recommendations then, maybe I wasn't. Severance on Apple TV. Another Apple TV one. Severance is fantastic. I just finished the second season, and I loved it. And it's a real mind bender, and it was way too long between season 1 and season 2. So if you've never watched it, now's the time, because now you don't have to wait like 3 years between seasons, and they've already been renewed for season 3. So well worth checking out. It's a very weird show, but it's also a very, very good show. So yeah, check it out. Severance. Back to the show. All right. Our next question comes from David Wood. Do you have any thoughts on why there can be periods of high strangeness in a person's life, besides that the life is going through transitional or liminal phases? And why there seem to be periods where absolutely nothing happens, sometimes years, which I've been going through a non-eventful period for some time now. Yes, because, I mean, obviously liminality plays a part in it, but I think these things happen when you need them to happen. So I'm actually gonna answer this by combining this with another question. And one of the questions that Jeffrey Whitehead asked is, if you could ask a spirit one question, what would it be? I don't tend to ask spirits questions because I'm not sure what a spirit is. In a sense, like when I interact with stuff, I don't know what it is. I try not to define it because I think defining it labels it. But what I'll usually ask of the universe, of whatever's around me, is what should I be paying attention to? And I feel like, yeah, I'll go through periods where nothing really paranormal will happen at all. And that's usually disappointing because I like it when weird stuff happens. And not even weird dreams or anything for a while. And then I'll start, suddenly there'll be a blast of stuff. Now, I think, as I'm writing the autobiography, I'm seeing that a lot of these blasts of stuff happen literally for a reason. They're not just random. They are there to show you or teach you something, or like I said earlier, to sort of shake your perceptions on things. But you don't need that constantly. Very few people have it constantly in their life. So, yeah, again, there's this stew of different elements that come and go that cause this stuff to happen. And I think there are things that, like me seeing a fireball roll across my driveway. There was nothing really deep to be taken out of that other than these things happen. But I think there are some things that just happen. They're not anything deep or meaningful. But at the same time, most of the stuff seems to have some connection to what's going on internally. So you're always going to go through periods of growth. You may always be changing and stuff, but there are periods of bigger and smaller change. And I think it's those periods of bigger change that really start activity up. And that's also why liminal stuff puts you more in the state of mind that you're open to it as well. And maybe that's part of the reason it comes out like that. I hope that made sense.
No, that definitely made sense.
What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Zach.
Chris, you go ahead, man.
No, it's all right. I always go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I think sometimes too, sort of like the fireball you talked about, Soraya, where there's not a lot to take from it. It just something that happened is, if you're used to having paranormal, unusual experiences, when they're not. When they're pretty benign, I think that you start to notice them less too. It's one of those things where sometimes I'll kind of wonder if I'm having experiences anymore or not, or if I'm going to, and then I'll kind of start going back and cataloging through my head of just what's going on in the last 6 months or the last year. And it's like, oh yeah, no, strange things have definitely happened to me, but it's so integrated in my life that I'm like, that's cool. And then I make my turn at the exit I've got to make on the interstate and go into the next thing. But when you need to see it, it gets in your face.
And I just realized that Abby had followed up on David's question, and she said, wondering what causes high strangeness, what attracts it, and what factors may repel it or cause it to go away. Because the difference I'm feeling is so striking, it feels like awe occupied a space in me for so long that I can still feel the shape and its absence so acutely. It's like a hollowness, a phantom pain, or physical hunger. The absence of wonder feels like such a loss. I spent the last few years just watching and waiting for it to return, and finally now kind of grieving its passing. So are there other factors you guys have experienced or can think of that act as either attractors or repellents? Liminality, marginality, anti-structure are definitely still intrinsically ingrained into my daily chaos of a life, so I don't think that's changed much. Is there anything else you think may generate or call forth high strangeness, or for me, what felt like a mutually shared awareness, a sense of aliveness to everything, or just pure wonder? Sorry for whining here, but normal life feels super boring and also harsh. Everything gets so sharply defined in the unbreachable, boxed-in outlines with jagged edges by comparison. And even on beautiful days or night, it feels so flat-lined without a pulse. I used to feel this living presence like I was never alone, in a good way, and I know how that sounds, like a case of clinical classic clinical depression. I've always had that in varying degrees, and I know its contours and permutations pretty well. I honestly don't think that's part of it for sure, but I honestly don't think that's it. Part of it for sure, but more a consequence, not a cause. I have this waning hope that this period is simply a necessary, albeit prolonged dearth, like the fallow that occurs for a season while the soil is replenished and re-enriched so the next season your crops can grow again. It may feel and appear like nothing's happening, but really the phenomena has simply gone beneath the surface to gather up and replenish itself with that necessary etheric energy or whatever fuels it. So it can come back to the surface again, literally and figuratively, but that hope is fading. I'd never want to conjure anything, but I'm more wondering if I did something, or more likely failed to do something that I was supposed to do. I use that word lightly. And whatever I failed to do was the reason for its presence in the first place. Maybe it realized I was never going to get it, so it moved on, almost like it gave up on me. Or did I do exactly as intended, so it left because my job was done? But now, how do you go back to a normal life after all that, carrying that knowledge and memory? That there is an unspeakable awe somewhere out there. It's not just there for you anymore. That's an actual question, just so you know. I know you can't offer definitive answers on this, obviously, but any thoughts you guys had would be really interesting, and I'd be so grateful to hear them. So, obviously, Abby's show ran at the end of last year, maybe running into the beginning of this year, and she's had some absolutely amazing experiences for quite a long time. And as far as it going silent, I the first time I noticed that was when I would drink. And everything, there would just be this absence, like everything was gone. But it definitely does seem to come in waves, and those waves are not, it's not just like a constant barrage. When I talk about all the stuff that's happened to me, people are like, oh, there's always weird stuff going on around you. And I'm like, no, it could be months and months, and not a single weird thing will happen. And then like 5 weird things will happen. And then it'll go months and months, and nothing weird will happen.
I mean, I think I don't know. I feel like that's part of it. Again, this is just my sort of syncretic understanding of how I think these things work now. But it seems to me like it feels fairly obvious that it's going to go in cycles in the same way that everything goes in cycles,
yes,
unless a person is, trying to actively, go after it, I guess, that can sort of change it. I mean, to back up, I think at this point in my life and understanding of stuff, I think that, high strangeness has something to do with, I guess you could call it a control system, but it has something to do with the afterlife and us spiritually. But I think it has it's something having to do like a byproduct of evolution. And it's something, at least in some instances, and I don't think this is always the case, but I think the ability to see other worlds and to interact with other worlds is part of human, natural human progress, and how humans can naturally shift their consciousness, whether it's an evolution towards, a different type of human, or it's simply a way of connecting with particular, things that we might have had at one point that don't have now. I don't know. I mean, all of those are, I think, kind of, tropes that have been subsumed by New Age to some degree. But I think that there is something that is, and I'll say the word natural going on, but in worlds beyond what we're aware of, and that if you look at it as that, then there are going to be cycles. It's like in the same way that, if you're, going through puberty, you'll have, for a few months, there'll be some spurts of, growth spurts, and then you'll settle down for a while. And I do think that a person can, intentionally interact with this and push themselves and their body or their consciousness. I don't know if it necessarily is something that's going to stick. I think that's what, magicians and yogis are doing. Whether it sticks, I'm not sure. And by stick, I mean it's something that, becomes permanent, and that, you're like a transformed, transmogrified person, or whether or not it's something that is temporary, like, when you go a psychedelic trip. You know, it has this, you can't hold on to it, but it's there for a moment. And so I think, you know, well, definitely in the case of Abby, I would say you didn't do anything wrong by any stretch of the imagination. But I have heard of, particularly in the realm of spirituality, and I'll say specifically Sufism, or unorthodox Sufism, that there are, you know, many people who talk about like the you know, the ecstasy of having some connection to the divine, and then, you know, having that taken away, and how that can be, you know, a very like a traumatic thing, but it's part of the process of, you know, eventually getting there. And I mean, I don't know if any of this applies to Abby in particular, but I do think that the idea that, you know, we are able to sort of ride out the ups and downs and not try to control high strangeness, that to me, at least from what I've gathered, seems to be the best way to try to approach it. I mean, you can certainly try to engage, I think, with the phenomena, but thinking that somehow, and this is where, you know, I disagree from other folks, and that I think that the sort of controlling down and, calling down and controlling demons, you know, I have some suspicion as to either the ethics or morality or reality of that. But I think that beyond that, just, you know, sort of understanding it as a force of nature in the way I think a lot of people deal with synchronicity. But yeah, it can be hard if you're missing some feeling of connection. Totally makes sense.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of that too, Chris. I think these things come and go, and you know, sometimes they're there because you need it. One thing I would, you know, and I don't know what Abby's hobbies are or anything like that, but you know, it seems like when people take up creative hobbies, like doing art and things like that, and kind of let themselves get lost in it, it can sort of recharge some of this, or bring it a little closer sometimes. And so that might be something to explore a little.
Well,
and then go ahead, Sarat.
Well, the Ruth Fortescue actually, did I say that? Fortescue says, does anyone do art? I had an uptick in spooky spiritual stuff during the time I attended an informal pottery pastels class. Gotta love Neptune transits. I've also seen art therapy painting help ground a psychologically disturbed person. Creating art seems to open a link between the worlds.
I'll be damned. Excuse me. I'll be damned.
And I mean, that's another thing that Jeff Ritzmann would always focus on. He would say that a lot of times the people experiencing high strangeness were artists. And I will say Abby is also an artist. She has, I've seen a bunch of, Chris has seen a bunch of her artwork as well. It's some really stunning stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And a good photographer as well. So, yes, I think that creativity, whatever art you're planning on doing, definitely seems to connect into this other.
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, just going back to like the phenomena being trickstery, you know, if you seek it out a little bit, I think it actually can make it a little harder.
Yes. Because
it's elusive. And so it's almost, you have to focus on other things and, you know, see if it comes back around almost.
Mm-hmm. And I very much know the feeling she's talking about, because I've felt that way various times in my life where I feel like it's just gone. Like whatever I'm interacting with is just gone, and it always comes back eventually. But yeah, it's like an emptiness.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's like I always described it as like losing faith, because suddenly everything just feels very empty, and it is very depressing.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anything weird has really happened to me for a little bit, but also my life has been so busy, like I haven't had time to do things like meditate like I used to, or even take walks at night like I used to. Of course, it's been freezing out for the last few months, but even before that, you know, like I used to go on like regular walks in the middle of the night. And I just don't have time because I'm just working nonstop, trying to pay bills. You know, I mean, it's just a real life situation that you can't ignore. And even meditation, I mean, ever since COVID, my ability to concentrate has never been the same. And so I've only meditated a few times, and every time I'd had some pretty positive results from it. But again, it's also a thing where it's like by the time I have any time to meditate, I'm too tired. And I
Yeah,
learned
totally.
fairly early on, don't meditate when you're tired because your body then starts not liking meditating. It feels like a chore
Mhm.
where you just fall asleep.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, creativity go hand in hand with this stuff. A lot of people who are artists and stuff, and, you know, as well as people who live liminal lives, have weird experiences.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things Jeff had asked me is if I ever asked any of the wrestlers I interviewed if they had weird experiences, and I never did, never even thought to. You know, like it's not part of the conversation. It's like they seem like such worlds apart, but I mean, being a wrestler would be a very liminal lifestyle.
That's true. They're always going between different places and staying in hotel rooms, and they're out there playing a part.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
yeah, wow, that really is.
It has all the different elements that you would think would be perfect for weird stuff to happen.
Yeah.
So let's see. Also, you guys, I didn't throw to you the question if you could ask a spirit one question, what would it be?
I was
All
gonna
right,
let
then.
Chris go first.
Yeah, man. I don't know.
Go ahead.
I don't know if it's tough for me to think of one because I am probably overthinking this, but I don't know what kind of spirit. You know what I mean? Like that's my question.
Well, it's a
Is
very
it
open
like,
question. You know,
it's a very open question, and it really would depend on what kind of spirit it is. Like if I was, in a house that had apparitions that, were in the traditional ghost sense, I would probably be like, why are you still, trying to interact with this world or, whatever it is? Who are you? What are you? But if I was, doing some sort of ritual type ceremony and asking for guidance or something, I'd probably be talking to what I would think of more as, a discarnate spirit, something that has like a, I don't know, in the sense that, or like an angel, I don't know. So I would want to,
sort of thing.
like a spirit of intellect, or I don't know, whatever it is. I'd probably ask more esoteric questions about mystical things. Yeah,
You can always ask the ghost where it thinks it is.
that's true. That's a good one.
Again,
I like
I'm pretty sure I stole that from Jeff.
Yeah.
Because he was
Oh,
was getting into ghost stuff, and I think that was one of the questions that he wanted to ask. Contact with ghosts, like where are you?
It's a really good one. I like that.
That is a good one. Yeah.
You could also play a drinking game of how many times I bring up A, Jeff Ritzman, B, Seth, and C,
Right.
Kundalini.
Right.
We might have to actually do that one night. Patreon only. You know what? I'm really funny about all this because I don't know if I want any answers from anything. Very deeply because I enjoy the mystery of it all.
Right.
So I would enjoy talking to a spirit, and having conversation, but I wouldn't want to ask it, anything about, ultimately like what is reality or anything like that. I'd rather take clues from the interaction and just see how that fits into what I already think about, because, going back to what Abby was talking about, a lot of this continues to re-enchant the world for me. And I need that too, I like that quite a bit about all of the paranormal and high strangeness and the occult and what have you. So I don't know if I would want anything specifically answered. More so, I'd rather have a direction to go, trudge down and dig a little deeper, maybe.
Sure.
All right. Cicely, I hope I got her name right this time, asks, I grew up surrounded by strict materialists. The paranormal was a joke or a mental illness. I was 30 years old when the dam finally burst. I never truly believed in materialism. I never truly believed anything, to be honest. I've got to be open and assume nothing, part down. And assume, I'm not sure what she meant there. I've got the be open and assume nothing part down. Okay, I read that wrong. But how do I get rid of that immediate instinct that I just have to explain things away or brush them off as nothing? That's hard because I've always had that issue. My brain always starts to cycle through what is this that I'm, what am I misinterpreting here? Before I finally can get to okay, there's really nothing I can think of that could be causing this that I'm experiencing. And I still leave open beyond that I might just not be, I'm not figuring out the practical, simple explanation for this, you know? But yeah, it's hard to get out of that materialistic paradigm because it's been so ingrained in Western culture for literally, over 100 years now. It's just been hammered into us that this stuff is not real. But yet we've had experiences, everyone that's ever lived has had these experiences. So clearly there's something real about them. They may not be what we interpret them to be, but they're real experiences. And I don't know how to kind of, not just give into that urge to explain them away sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because there are so many things that I think are just fine to recognize about the material world that we live in. It's the, material only world that's a problem.
Yes.
If you could just have that like wonderful synergy of, really smart, cutting edge work that's being done technologically from the scientific side using the scientific method. I'll take all the medical and technological advances you want to give, but at the same time, being able to, have mystical or, exploration and research and consciousness based and things that are not empirical. And I know that flies in the face of, essentially the industry that's been built up around material science.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That's the thing. And I think that industry is harmful because it forces us to only think in a material way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not bad to have a litmus test for things.
No.
I think that's good, because if you go to the other end, then everything's got meaning and you can drive yourself crazy.
Sure.
Which I don't know if, you guys have had this experience or other listeners have, but, sometimes I've been depressed, especially when I was like in my 20s and, relationships going bad. And then like for a while, everything's a sign.
Yeah.
Or I'm waiting for the next thing to tell me what to do. And like, it just makes me, spiral more.
Sure.
And so I've, really had to learn to not poke at things too, when I would get something back that was a little, out of the ordinary. But one of the things I think that's helped for me, because I do the same thing, Soraya, you were talking about, where I'll just go through and always leave room that maybe I'm just misinterpreting this. But it's having a good circle of folks that also are open to those things. And so, like all of our friendships around the show and in the Slack and things like that,
sure,
make it a little easier to process, when things are unusual and they don't fit anything natural that I can think of. And natural's the wrong term to use there, but
it's all natural in the end.
Sure,
but there are times where things are omens in a sense, that they're a very material, basic thing that anyone could have seen hits you at just the right moment, and it's profound. It doesn't have to be paranormal to have that profundity.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So, I mean, when I was trying to figure out what those little that laser would turn out to be the scarecrow, the laser scarecrow thing.
Right. Yeah.
One of the times I'm driving down that road and suddenly there is a gigantic owl flying right alongside my car.
Yeah.
And that felt meaningful. Like it was just the way the whole thing presented itself. The fact that I could barely see the owl and how big it really was, and that it was flying right alongside the car. And I was just like, whoa.
Sure.
And it's not like, oh, that meant this. It's not that. It was just kind of like, wow, that was a really profound experience. It's not because I took something very specific away from it. It just felt special,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
There was a night I had taken a walk out into the back field, because there's fields all around my house for the most part. And I'd walked back further than I ever had before. And there's like this area of trees, and in between it's an opening where they're running power lines. And I looked through there one night, and the entire thing had literally thousands and thousands of fireflies.
Oh, nice.
And it was just one of those moments where, I was just like, wow. And I stopped, and it's just that sense of just how stunning nature can be, like what a beautiful world we actually do live in, even if it doesn't always seem like it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like, that's the traditional, that's the sublime that Immanuel Kant talked about, that is seeing the true, the beauty of God in nature, and God meaning, sort of the everything, the absolute. Yeah.
So, and it doesn't take something paranormal for that. Like, that wasn't a paranormal experience. It was just a beautiful experience. Look at how astronauts talk about looking down on the Earth.
Right. The overview effect.
Yeah.
Everybody except for William Shatner.
Well, that's because he'd been in space his whole life.
That's true. Yeah, he's been there a long time.
We'll continue answering the rest of these questions in the Patreon segment because we're out of time. I do want to say we were talking about music and stuff earlier, but at some point, it was like last week or something, I was I'm reading a book on for a guest who hopefully I'll have on soon, on ancient near-death experiences. Like, he went through and cataloged like how ancient cultures saw death. And because even though there aren't a lot of personal accounts, he looked at like the overall like various ancient cultures, how they saw death and where the similarities are and where those match up to the current near-death experiences. And it's a very interesting book. And for some reason, like I think I was watching a live Tower concert at the same time as I was reading it. And I'm going, man, you know what I would really miss when I die? Music. Like, there may be amazing music in the afterlife, but the music I like right now, I really, really like.
Right.
And it's one of those things, like, I feel like I'd miss music. Everything else I could get over. But as long as I could still somehow hear music.
Yeah.
If it even did the same thing to us in a different state, I don't know.
Totally.
But I mean, that's how much music actually affects me. All right. So, like I said, we're going to answer the rest of these in the Patreon. There's a handful more we're going to get to. And I thank everyone who threw questions to us. And I opened this up to free people who have subscribed to the free version of the Patreon as well, which I'm going to do in the future. So if you just want to go subscribe to be a free member, I'll throw occasional stuff up there for free members as well. Because I realized a bunch of people have done that and I wasn't aware. So, this listener questions or whatever we're going to call this episode was also available for free subscribers. But the second part here to this whole conversation is only going to be available for patrons. And, anything else either of you want to say? Chris, you can be found at brightrectangle.com.
Yeah, brightrectangle.com, or here.
And Saxon can be found flying through the sky.
Pretty much, if you call me on the bat phone or anything like that, I will show up. But I'm on Instagram and Blue Sky under Super Infoman.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons. I can't do this without you, so thank you for supporting the show. And know that every positive thing that comes out of this show is partially because of you. I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons who are pledging $10 or more a month. Greg Ross, John Blackburn, Madeline J., Marty Garza, Matt in Delaware, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Marthartha, Midnight Review presents Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Abby Allen, Cherry Trapezoid, Patricia Giaquinta, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Billuminati, Bright Rectangle, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy and Communicable, Corey Nelson, Diane B., MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, Jamie Page, History and Coffee, J. Otto Bullitt, Jack Huntington, James Lindsay, Jim and Sophie, John Mattingly, John Bracken, Jonathan Frost, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Shurek, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linda from Michigan, Linz Jackson K., MJ Armstrong, Mark Shoemaker, Mark Brady, Mark Smith, Paul Jeffries, Perry Peters, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Sasha McHale, Janet's Planet, Strange Stories with the Seeker and Skeptic podcast, Verosh K., Schmooples, Devourer of Mortal Souls, Stacy Sherwood, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead,
Victoria, Vincent Treewell, Will Cherry, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Annabelle Smith, Caroline Walker, TDT Skunkworks, Colin Karras, Craig Sagastumi, and Matthew Brown. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. The remainder of the questions for the show we will answer in the Patreon segment. So, yeah, there's still quite a few left. And we talk quite a bit about conspiracies, which we don't normally do. Kind of go down a 9/11 rabbit hole, because I did do a lot of research on that back, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. Anyway, I want to welcome a couple of new patrons, Steve George 272 and Jocko. Welcome. I hope you enjoyed the extra content. And if you want to become a patron, again, it's only $3 a month. It helps us out greatly. And you get extra content galore. Also, you can help out by sharing the show and giving us a good rating wherever you're listening and stuff like that. And it's very much appreciated. It really is. It helps us keep going with this. And I'll see you next time.
You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.